Well, Democrats' chances of winning back the House appear to be growing if that actually happens. There's a chance that they may move to impeach President Trump. But one man, a billionaire investor named Tom Steyer, he doesn't want to wait. He's already started a full-fledged war to get President Trump out the White House. Bloomberg Businessweek's Max Abelson wrote a profile of Steyer, and he joins me now. Okay, I want to start off. If you can just explain to folks who don't know him, who is he?
Of course. So the answer is interesting. I mean, he's like a classic Wall Street guy. Started at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. Then he had a hedge fund, and not just like a small hedge fund. I mean, truly one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. He became a finance billionaire. But he kind of had like a reawakening. First, he became an environmentalist. And then, honestly, he basically had a second reawakening about 6 months ago. And he turned into this American political figure. I mean, you might recognize his face from TV. Mm-hmm. He's basically funding an ad campaign to impeach Donald Trump.
Oh, you do see him out on television a lot. But, you know, Max, what really sort of was surprising to me, according to disclosed donations, Steyer actually spent more than the Koch brothers, than Sheldon Adelson, Robert Mercer during the last two election cycles. How is that possible? What do you make of that?
That's absolutely right. Well, it's important to keep in mind that there's also dark money. There's donations that billionaires make that we just can't see because it's dark. But when it comes to disclosed donations, and there are a lot of them, Tom Steyer is the biggest donor in America in 2014, 2016, and he might be the biggest donor again in 2018. And that's because he's spending so much money on impeachment, and he's also spending a lot of money to bring millennials to voting booths in November. The thing about it is, though, he doesn't like see himself as like just another billionaire cutting checks, to buy influence. Mm-hmm. He sort of sees himself, and part of what our business story is about, Businessweek story, is he sees himself as like this leader of a movement. He thinks he thinks America is in this crisis, this cosmic crisis, and he's kind of the man who can help save the day.
Interesting. I'm wondering if this movement that he calls really has traction. Obviously, there are Democrats who want to see President Trump impeached, but a Quinnipiac poll shows that 45% of registered voters do want to start the process. This was taken back in January. But I'm curious, Max, when you break this down by age, supporters, are they mostly young people at this point who want this impeachment process to happen? What's he really doing to change this?
It's a really important point. I mean, if you're living in a sort of bubble and all you know is people who think, the Trump White House is in chaos and that his presidency, isn't legitimate, you'll be surprised to find out that, like you say, less than half of the country actually really does want to impeach Donald Trump. And that's a problem for Tom Steyer. I mean, if people aren't ready to impeach, then, and this is what top Democrats say, this is kind of a fool's errand. It's divisive, it's premature. What he would say is that it's too important, that you shouldn't take political considerations into account. You should, if Donald Trump has, done things that are illegal and violated the Constitution, then he should be out of there. It's just, of course, a question of what's actually happened. The truth is, no one really knows what's going on in the White House, which is why he has sort of enemies among top Democrats whose attitude is basically like, Steyer, yeah. What are you doing?
Including some former President Obama officials at the top who just in general have been saying calls for impeachment are not going to help you going into midterms at this point. It could maybe perhaps have the reverse effect, mobilizing Trump supporters. Is he concerned about that at all?
Yep. One good thing about being a magazine writer in 2018 is that you can use Twitter to sort of watch your main character get into fights with people. And David Axelrod, of course, the former senior advisor to Barack Obama, Axelrod was basically like, look, Steyer, you're like a vain billionaire, be quiet on Twitter. And Steyer, of course, wrote back being like, you're a wuss. And, the truth of the matter is that's a good way of getting insight into the fact that Democrats are mad at him. But don't forget, there's also another group of people who are mad at him. And there are a lot of people who are skeptical about the political power that billionaires are able to buy in the United States in 2018. And, I watched the scene on Facebook, not on Twitter this time, where a guy raises his hand at a Steyer event and is basically like, you're talking about good and evil. But there are people who think that a guy with $1.6 billion who throws his money around to buy political favor, that may be evil. And Tom Steyer did not like that.
What was his reaction?
His reaction in a way was like, look, you're right. Money does buy too much influence in America, and I wish that weren't the case. So I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, and basically I'm operating within the system that we have. That's essentially what Steyer said.
Some people have called this an entire vanity project for Steyer. Do you see him ultimately running? Is this just a setup to run for election?
Honestly, it could be. I got to spend time with him in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Bloomberg sent me there. It was the first time I've ever been in Vegas. I watched him in D.C. as well. And the guy, he just I've never seen someone who loves giving high fives, who loves hugging, who loves shaking hands. He just
You called him Clinton-esque, actually, to me earlier before the program.
It's true. true. I mean, he seems to be genuinely drawn to running. He says he's not running, at least in 2018. But I think one thing that we might see in 2020, following Donald Trump's run in 2016, obviously, is billionaires being like, look, if Donald Trump can run, why can't I? And so maybe we'll start seeing people like Howard Schultz or Mark Cuban or Facebook billionaires run for office. We just don't know. We're still a little ways away.
All right, Max Abelson, thank you so much for joining us, Max. Fascinating piece.
Thanks so much.